Welcome back to another episode of Kaiju Talk. This is Jared Adams.
That's Carter Hadlow.
And today we were talking about Marvel Cinematic Universe. Everyone kind of knows this topic, I guess you could say, in terms of the lately the inconsistency with the CGI. We didn't really want to discuss the movies themselves just because we're still needing to get up to date with some of the films.
Yeah,
that will probably be a little later. Right now, we'll be discussing the issues with the CGI, and I think everyone can agree some moments have been pretty awful, actually.
Yep. 2008, Iron Man 1. No, I'm serious.
Yeah, no, it is true.
That movie was fantastic.
It was great to see this character come to life, finally. I really don't know how they would have been able to do it prior. Like, let's just say if they tried doing it in the 90s, I don't think it would have
Yeah,
really
I mean,
worked.
like, there wasn't... It's been a while since I've seen that movie, but there wasn't, like, a ton of CG in that movie. Like, it was used pretty not sparingly. I mean, obviously there's scenes when he's flying and shit, like, it just has to be CG. Of course, I mean, with that movie, that was Marvel, that was sort of their make it or break it moment, right? It's like, they sold the IP for Spider-Man and all of that to Sony, and they're like, oh shit, all we got left is Iron Man. We gotta do something. We gotta stay afloat.
Iron Man 2 came out, again, CGI. Consistent.
And I think the thing there is that in those movies, they didn't rely too heavily on it. There's still a lot of practical effects, and so that they would combine the two so that it was sort of, it wasn't like everything was just CG. Captain America, that movie, like the whole making Chris Evans look tiny at the start, like that was so convincing. I remember I watched that movie, I was like, what the hell? I don't get it. Like is that Chris Evans? Did he just lose like 100 pounds?
Did he shrunk?
Like,
Did he shrink
crap.
too? Then they came with Avengers. I had no issue with the CGI. Like, I could still watch that today and be like,
yeah, the first Avengers was quite good.
This is great.
Well, I think one thing for me that sort of like the point when it started to, the CG started to kind of fail, for lack of a better word, was kind of when the movies started all becoming one. Like, I remember watching Civil War and being like, I can't tell if this is like an Avengers movie or a Captain America movie. You know what I mean? Like, it's got all the same characters, it's the same feel, the same style, the same look. Like, it's sort of, the whole MCU started to become pretty homogenous, where it's just like every movie just kind of looked and felt the same, which has its benefits. Obviously, you want to have that stylistic look that ties it all together, but it's sort of like you kind of lose track of like what movie even is this anymore.
Like, I will say, like, for me, it was like when I first saw the first teaser or trailer or whatever, and you saw Spider-Man jump in, I was so excited.
Yeah.
So excited. One thing I noticed, though, for me was, I guess you could say, it wasn't like how they shot Spider-Mans with like Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, where they were literally in a Spider-Man suit.
Yeah. Well, and even then, like in the first Spider-Man movie, like the very first Tobey Maguire one, there was a lot of like practical effects in terms of like stunts and whatnot. Like, the CG was much more minimal.
But when I saw Civil War, I did notice that the suit was almost just CGI'd. Like, and I understand it was meant to be more like it's a Tony Stark suit. Right.
Yeah.
And like, the whole idea of the eyes, like, shrinking and like doing all that.
Yeah, you can't, there's no way you could do it practically.
And you couldn't, but there were just some moments where I just felt this doesn't look real, right?
Yeah, they actually did have an actor in that suit, and there was stunt actors who wore those suits, but it's like, it's so like tight and form-fitting that for certain movements, it's like, you can't have him jumping certain ways, so that suit just wouldn't move that way, right? It's like this like giant rubber thing you're wearing, right? Like, it's also not a practical suit for any sort of superhero to really wear, to be honest.
Yeah, fair enough. I guess, yeah, no. What really got me, Black Panther, the ending fight between Black Panther and Killmonger.
It was pretty bad. It was Attack the Clones bad. Visualization of that scene and the fight scene, like the choreography of it, was amazing. It was great. It was really well done. It's just the CG was like... And it's funny because it's one of those things where it's like, usually when you have your CG in like a dimly lit environment, that's kind of when it excels and looks good. And every time you saw any glimpse of like light hitting one of the characters, the suits and stuff just looked all horrible. That's kind of the point too when Marvel was getting into the space where they were like building themselves a really demanding schedule for releases, and so they were going with like all these sort of cheaper outsourced compositing and CG companies like over in India and whatnot, where they unfortunately don't pay them very well and they don't give them a lot of time to like actually do these shots properly. So I think a lot of the shots fail because it's just like there's just, unlike the first Marvel movies and like movies like Avatar and stuff, where they have all these big budgets and all the time to like actually make these shots look amazing, and they spend the time doing it. With those movies later on in the Marvel universe, they just sort of is like, we just need to hammer this out as fast as we can, and so they go for the cheapest route possible to get like the most, like the minimal viable product basically that they can put out and be like, it's good enough, audiences will like it.
Infinity War. Now, a lot of times the CGI was actually really good, especially the fight on Titan with Thanos. Like that was in my honest opinion,
and I mean for that one, like, you know, that wrapping up that whole storyline, it has to be amazing.
Yeah, the Wakanda fight, it was honestly a mess.
Well, and it's hard when you do a scene in the middle of the day and you have like all these like CG characters out in daylight, and I'm sure they filmed a lot of those plates were practical. Like they're probably like out in the field filming some of the actors and then compositing these monsters into it, or the aliens or whatever. And it's so much harder to make that realistic when you're bringing a CG character into a real world scene, as opposed to on Titan or whatever, where the whole thing is just all CG and on green screen.
But like then when you see moments like Bruce Banner in Hulkbuster,
I guess it's the thing, like in terms of a composited shot, it looked great. But when you compare it to the rest of the movie, it stands out, right? Like that's the thing, because they've set the bar so high for themselves. As soon as you have something that doesn't quite reach that bar, it really stands out. You know what it is? It's the fact that the directors and the whole committee that makes these movies like have so many last minute changes. Like that's what I've read about this. Like, it's always like, you know, someone will have a shot done and be like, no, change this, change that, change this, change that. And so it's like they're literally making changes up until like the very last second. It's like, okay, now the movie has to like go out to theaters tomorrow.
And so
like,
maybe that's why they're doing it all in CGI, so that's easier for them to change.
Well, I think that's one of the things, right? It's like if you don't commit to something on set, then you have that option later. But it's like, you know, like you really should be committed. Like, to me, that's like the lack of vision for a good filmmaker. Like if you're afraid to commit to something on set, you're not a good filmmaker.
Or
you know, like
you're in the wrong profession.
Yeah, you know, like I feel like you should be like a good filmmaker has seen their movie in their head before they've even like set up a camera.
Doctor Strange too, right? Where again,
but I mean that movie, like in its defense, there was also a lot of really cool shit going on in the movie.
There
like,
was
jumping through all the different like universes.
There,
or whatever.
there was, but it just felt like they put all the money into the CGI for that, and then that ridiculous. Oh my god! The
third eye. They once again the same as the Bruce Banner thing. It's like copy paste.
You know, and I understand a CGI doesn't make a movie, but it helps.
Can break a movie.
But there you go. It can break a movie, but it helps, right? Like
yeah, and it only gets worse on the TV shows.
Well, it's funny when you bring in the TV shows, like when you had shows like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki, Hawkeye, WandaVision, they were all...
Well, and I mean, especially for, like, Falcon and Winter Soldier and Hawkeye, like, because those ones dealt with the more sort of... realistic heroes, like, it wasn't as much CG in those ones. But even Loki had a lot of CG, and I thought it was great. I thought, like, it was very consistent, everything, like, there's nothing that really stood out in that one as, like, being weird looking.
Then when you get to shows like Miss Marvel and She-Hulk, where the CGI is... again, a mess, right? Like in Miss Marvel, some moments were really good in terms of CGI, but then it was just like...
Well, and there's that one scene in Miss Marvel, the one where she's like sort of doing her like training on the roof or whatever and kind of jumping around, and it's just like, it's so bad. It's just like, and I remember that scene got scrutinized a lot afterwards, and I remember even when I watched it for the first time, it was just like, holy shit, this is like not good. Like,
for me, it wasn't a bad series. Like it was a fun series, right? Like it was an enjoyable series.
I wouldn't rush to watch it again.
No, it just because again, I felt like maybe they were rushing it.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like all these new TV series are all like sort of, you know, what I've saying about a lot of these new ones, I've said this a lot about them, is like they would have been great 2-hour movies. But instead, they like stretch it out over these 8 episodes because they want to get as much viewers as possible and have people subscribing to Disney Plus. And it's all about money now, right? It's not actually about making necessarily good content. And so it's like something like Miss Marvel really suffered there because it's like the story, and like we're not going to get into the story of it. The people that work on it, I'm sure they do good work, but it's just like they're going for the cheapest possible solution, and it's not giving them the best results.
She-Hulk CGI, like with the character, it's just like we can both say it. Some moments are really good. Some moments I feel like I'm watching Fiona from Shrek. Like it's just
they try to make her character seem like a real person. And she's often like in settings that you wouldn't see like a superhero in, in the courtroom. And I found to me what stood out the most with her character was whenever she was wearing like a suit or whatever, it's like a blazer and whatnot. The cloth always just looked. It's that whole thing where like clothing doesn't always look great, right? And it's like you'd see her standing next to an actual person in an actual blazer, and you could just tell right away that her like outfit was just totally CG, even though like her character, like the actual Hulk character, might have looked good. The clothing she was wearing just like stood out as like bad CG, not bad. It
just
CG,
didn't work.
Like
it just didn't work.
It didn't match, right?
Yeah.
Like
it's strange how what Marvel's kind of doing in terms of their CGI, and like now that they've announced that they're going to be having their own production house, their own CGI or
like an in-house sort of thing or whatever.
Yeah, but it's just like, is that going to fix the problem though?
It's going to be the same problem. They're going to have the same issue where it's going to come down to, having these constant changes last minute. And so it's like, even though the people, like the artists and stuff, are doing good work and they're talented, it's like you can only do so much when you have like 24 hours to get a shot done, right? And you're being worked for like, if you're literally working for 20 of those 24 hours, it's like...
And a part of me kind of wonders, like, how many people are they going to fire?
They need to stop, like... relying on having the option in post and just commit to their movie and their TV shows on set and be like, this is what we're making, this is what the shot's going to be, and just know, like, have a vision for your visuals before you get into it.
Part of me feels like they just don't have any faith in the direction almost.
Well, that's what I mean,
they
right?
hire all these, they hire these like very good directors for filmmakers, and it's just like they're always seeming to coming, like, it seems to be a common issue, not just with the MCU, but like a lot of,
well, even like into the Star Wars universe and stuff, it's sort of
where they are kind of coming in to take over. It's just like
it's death by committee. It's too many people having too much say in what gets made.
I guess, again, I know what I said, CGI doesn't make a movie, but because of the CGI inconsistencies, it's almost like I'd rather almost see it on Disney+. But, I do hope that, maybe Marvel will be smartening up a bit, maybe, hopefully, too.
I mean, we've seen that happen in the Star Wars universe. They're starting to realize, like, oh yeah, the fans aren't happy with this stuff, so maybe Marvel will kind of pick up on that as well.
Hopefully, but, and here's to hoping, I guess.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys, for coming to watch our episode of Kaiju Talk. We'll be doing more episodes down the road. Please like and subscribe for us.
And if there's any topics you want to see us tackle, just leave a comment below.
All right. Thank you.
See you later.